Okay, I'm here. Haha. Okay, welcome to the show, everyone. You're listening to Belgariad and Beyond with Sondra and Alysia. And we're up to chapter 10 of Porn of Prophecy in the Belgariad series of books. Hey, Alysia, welcome to the show again.
Hi, good to be back again. I'm excited for this chapter.
Oh, it's all happening. It's all starting, isn't it?
Yeah. This was a lot to talk about this time, I think.
I think so. So let's dive straight in. You tell me what's in your cup this week. What's in Polgara's cup for you this week?
It is a spicy, sweet type of tea. I've been having a really, really great week. I've been feeling really inspired and also really relaxed. I think that always hits me during like Christmas, the week of Christmas leading up to it. I kind of slow down and I just go inward a lot and spend time with family. I don't really worry about work too much, and that always helps. And Christmas time with the family was really, really good. The kids had a lot of fun. We were able to get them most of the stuff they wanted, so that was good. But it still is a challenge for me when my kids are home from school. I can't deny that parenthood doesn't come naturally to me. So when I'm with them 24/7, trying to work from home is what makes it difficult. Can be challenging for me because it's like they're still younger. They don't necessarily get the difference of like, but you're home, come be with us. And it's like, well, no, I have to focus on this stuff too. And then I'll take a break and then I'll come back to work and then I'll stop at this time and then I'm done for the day, So it's a challenge, but.
It's so interesting that you say that it doesn't come naturally. That is not what I have seen since I've known you and experiencing the way that you are with your girls. So it's just interesting to me that you make that comment.
Mm-hmm.
And that I don't know, that might be a conversation we have sometime about why you're beating yourself up about that particular thing.
I think for me, the reason I say that is because I notice when I'm in the mothering mode, when that's like who I am being, I have less patience. I lose my cool really easily. I don't necessarily have patience for complaints and whining and fighting, and I'll easily just kind of nip it in the butt. I can become very much like Aunt Pole and be that tough. Like, I've actually done it with Alexis's friends at times when they get in those modes. I'm the only adult around, and I'll react how I normally react with my own children, and the other girls look at me like, whoa, like what? And then it's kind of to me like, oh, am I being too harsh? Well, I don't feel like I'm a harsh person, but
because there are lots of different ways of being a mother, and the way that you are a mother is the right way for you.
Yeah.
So that's the natural way that you are a mother. So I would say you are a natural mother. You're just your own type of mother.
Right.
So
it's true.
There you go. Yes, and totally get it. Paul wouldn't stand for any bullshit either.
Right. That's how I feel. That's the kind of mother I am. It just feels like I'm being harsh, but I don't know how any other way to do it. So.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So how about you? How was your week?
My week was like, my cup has this thick, sweet, dark chocolate fudge kind of concoction in it, and I could quite happily eat it with a spoon. That's how sort of thick and yummy it is. I just had such an amazing week. I feel super accomplished, and I've had a week of in my private group, Your Kind Voice, that I do with my holistic therapy stuff. I've just done a week of Christmas presents. So I know that this is like, you know, weeks after Christmas when you're all hearing this, darling listeners. But for me, it's just like Christmas was 2 days ago. And so I've just done this week of hashtag Christmas presents. And it was all about the ways that we can be present for ourselves. And it was things like grace and connection and peace and those kinds of things, and the ways that that sort of stuff was showing up in our life. And so I was sort of focusing on my physical body because I've had a few little hiccups that I'm not going to talk about right now. But it was this really gentle kind of peeling away of all of this stuff. And now I feel so much lighter. And I had the Christmas do with the family, my in-laws, yesterday. And I made the brownie, the dessert, for the dinner. And I call it my Christmas brownie. And so my cup is full of, you know, like if I took a piece of this brownie and melted it and poured it into a cup, that's what's in my cup. There's so much chocolate and butter and eggs and sugar in this concoction. It's just so delicious and like about half a step away from pure fudge.
That sounds amazing.
and so I've just like been so productive, and even though I didn't feel particularly well, I was showing up every day because I'd made this commitment to my group. And so I wasn't only showing up for it, it started out with me showing up for them, but it was me showing up for me. And that was the important part. And so it was so healing. And you know, so by the time I got to last night and today, I'm just feeling like I could float out of my chair. I've had such a good day.
Yeah, that I was following a little bit of that in your group, and the people in your group are really into it as well. And I think that engagement alone can really like lift you up and just personally within yourself too.
Yeah, everyone is so supportive, weren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that's been my week.
It sounds really good. And I forgot that, yeah, by the time people listen to this, Christmas will have been months ago.
So we've got, this is chapter 10. So this is episode 10. And episode 1
starts in January. So this will be like
next week. So we're doing some time travel calculations here. Beep, beep, beep.
At the beginning of March.
10 weeks from now. When's that?
Beginning of March sometime.
So we're talking about Christmas in March. This is weird. Welcome to the wibbly wobbly, timey wimey world of Belgariad and beyond. Yes, I know that was a total crossover, but welcome to the show.
That's
all right.
So unique. So yeah, why don't we get into that in chapter 10?
Garion's view. Give me the summary.
Okay, so the chapter starts. They are on the road to Kamar for a little bit. And they stop at a couple of, okay, how do you say this?
Tolnedron.
Tolnedron. Okay.
Or Tolnedron or Tolnedron?
Right.
I'm Australian, so that's my accent.
Yeah, I was going to say Tolnedron. So
No. Oh, there we go. Just a bit of Dutch thrown in there too.
Tolnedron hostel. So there's like two separate ones they stop at, but Garion notices they look exactly the same. We learn that they like to basically keep things that are familiar and comfortable to them. So then Aunt Pole gets fed up with going undercover as vagabonds and decides that she's going to choose her own disguise this time, pretends to be a duchess. When they get to Kamar, basically tells Mr. Wolf, "You're paying for all of this." And he's like, kind of just shrugs it off, you know, and like, whatever you want, it's fine. And so they stay at the finest inn. She gets treated basically like what I would imagine is royalty in this world. And again, Mr. Wolf, he seems to have no bottom to the purse that he's carrying his coins in. He just keeps pulling the money out for whatever they need. And we get some insight while they're in this inn between Garion and some of the characters. And then while they're at the inn, some soldiers arrive who say they're sent by the king, and they're looking for basically Mr. Wolf, the man with the white hair and beard. And he basically eventually just walks out and says, "Oh, that's me." And so they tell them very kindly that they're basically going to be keeping them prisoner at the end. At least that's how Garion perceives it. Mm-hmm. That's how I perceived it too.
Yep. That's a pretty good summary, babe.
Yeah. Thank you. So into the details of this chapter.
Into the details. So when they start, at the start, I'm actually going to, try and keep track this time and skip through the chapter as we're talking about it so that I know. Because it's sort of a transitional chapter, I think, this one. It gets into the wider world, and we start, I don't know, it feels like it's spreading out, like bleeding out into the storybook world. And we're getting to know more, and we're gathering more information. And so it's not an info dump, but there's a lot of information scattered through the chapter that I think is really important.
Okay. Yeah, so it starts off with them still on the road, and they're like in the snowstorm basically. And that's when they find, they decide they need to find a place to stay for the night. And they find that hostel.
So yeah, and they've left the last chapter they left with the Algar horses, and they're really, top of the hill horses. And so they've been galloping. So they galloped all day in the snow, and it took them 10 leagues, and it's 40 leagues to Kamar. So that's like 4 days. So I think they must stay at hostels. Like, it must be more than twice that they do it, but they only talk really specifically about twice. But it gives you the impression that, like, they tell you how long it's going to be, 10 leagues a day galloping. So maybe 3 or maybe even 4 times stopping on the road.
Yeah, I would imagine they'd have to stop more than that. But the 2 that we see, Garion observes the food is plain but filling, and and the first stop is when he again starts questioning out Pol, about who were his parents and why won't you tell him anything.
So when they stop, he's so exhausted, they've been galloping and it's snowing, and so he's cold and tired and, really hungry. And so they finally get to the hostel, and they've had the dinner, and Garion's sitting there almost unconscious at the table, and everyone's sort of starting to talk softly, and Pol tells him, suggests that it's time for bed, and he does that whole "I'm not a child, Aunt Pol," and she just sort of agrees with him. Yes, yes dear, come on. and so he's at that really beautiful stage where and like he stands up, and he's surprised to discover that his knees don't hold him. Like, he's shaking at the knees, he's so tired, but Aunt Pol is there to like hold him up and help him go. So, that fierce, did you ever feel that? Like that fierce, you just so wanted to be counted as not an adult, because you knew you weren't an adult, but like not a child?
Yeah, like you had your own mind, you could think for yourself, and you didn't have to be told what to do. And
but then
all the time. I think that scene where she actually helps him because he is so tired, again, she's right.
Yes.
And it's just kind of this constantly, every time he tries to defy her by saying, but I'm not a child, then there's always like some instance to where actually she does have to kind of treat him like a child by helping him to bed, But
she's quite, I know we say all the time that she's really stern, but she's actually really loving. Like the way that she's just so patient with the yes dear, and she helps him, she just does it, even though he says he doesn't want her to, but he obviously needs her to. Mm-hmm. And this next scene that they go into is one of my favorite in the whole chapter. Do you remember it?
Well, she takes him upstairs, right? And
Yeah.
then
And he's so tired and he lies down.
he's asking her about his parents again.
So this is interesting. Like, so he doesn't know the names of his parents.
Right.
So this is the first sort of, so he mustn't have asked about them since that last time. And that was years ago for him when he was a little boy, when he found out that they died.
Mm-hmm.
And so she says the names of Garion's parents are, I think it's Garan and Ildera.
Yeah. And he says the names don't sound Sendarian. And she just flat out tells him, well, they're not.
Yeah. So
so that was a bit of honesty from her that she doesn't usually give him, right?
yeah, but she's not willing to tell him, what race they are. It's a very long story, and you're much too tired to hear about that now.
Yeah.
And then, the way that he did when he was a little boy, he reaches out his hand and touches that white lock of her hair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was curious about that part because I'm like, I remember the first time he did it and he was younger. So I'm thinking in my head, reading this for the first time, did he really wait that long to try doing it again? Or was there other times in between that we didn't know about? Or are we meant to believe there's only been 2 times that he's done this and that...
Well, I think that we're meant to believe that he's only done it the 2 times because Aunt Pol's response is that she moves her head away and says, I've asked you not to do that, Garion, with a very matter-of-fact tone. So it feels like it's not something that's happened very often. And I suspect that it is just the 2 times.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this is the moment when it seems like she, like just with her words, makes him get really sleepy and close his eyes, right?
Yeah. So she's like, and so what happens when he touches her hair is that he sees a face like Mr. Wolf's, but not Mr. Wolf. And he gets a sense of towering fury. And all of this fury is directed at that face. And then that's it.
Right.
So that was interesting. That's interesting. What do you think about that?
By the time I got to the end of this chapter, I'd already forgotten about that part of the chapter. And looking back, though, knowing how this chapter ends with Mr. Wolf, I feel like Garion may be having like a premonition in a way of what's to come.
Interesting.
Sense.
Okay, interesting.
And I think there's much more meaning to it, but I also think it is in some ways reflective of what happens to Mr. Wolf at the end of this chapter.
Okay. And so yeah, they have this. So he's sort of falling asleep, and it feels like he's sort of saying, "You're going to have to tell me one day," and she's like, "Yes, but not yet." But it feels kind of comfortable, like he's almost content to wait now because he knows that at some point he will know, and he sort of gained that little bit of perspective just with with a little bit of time passing, and maybe his experiences with everyone on the road and his world sort of expanding so hugely that he can see that there's much more to his life or to life in general than he thought there was. And so maybe that's why he's a little bit more content to wait. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think it's partly that, but I think it's also that he's starting to kind of figure out his own answers too. Like in I think it was the last chapter with that shadowy figure in the window and that nick in his arm type thing. And he's just really understanding there's something deeper that's magic related that I think he almost kind of wants to figure it out for himself in some ways than just be told the answer now. I don't know. That's the feeling I'm getting.
Yep. And so I'm going to save that little bit where he goes to sleep because that's my magic thing.
Okay. Yeah. So he falls asleep and Silk is there. This is the next morning when Silk is observing Sendaria and how misty and snowy it is and how cold it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is like, so we're getting more of an education about how what the environment's like. So Sendaria, misty Sendaria. So, it's like snow and rain, and so it's definitely this sort of agricultural landscape full of farms that we were introduced to at the start. I just see this rolling, I can sort of see it as countryside with, lots of farmland and generous rainfall, and then the seasons turn really, well, I kind of see it almost like where I live in the Netherlands is how I picture Sendaria looking, except for the fact that the Netherlands is perfectly flat. And the descriptions of Sendaria say it's like a rumpled cloth. There's so many hills and things. So maybe not quite like the Netherlands at all, actually.
Well, weather-wise, it sounds familiar. It
so maybe more like England
snowy.
or something. Or...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so then they go, Silk's just making these observations while they're moving to their next hostel for the day, for the night. And it's really kind of a quick transition there. And then they're suddenly arriving at Kamar. And this is when Aunt Pol decides that I'm taking charge now. We're not going to be staying at these low-grade inns anymore. I want some real food and a shower. And so they arrive at Kamar.
Isn't it thrilling? Like, I get a little thrill when Aunt Pol, like, it feels like she's gonna, if she had a cape, she would swirl it and like, lift herself up on her horse and like queen it over everybody. I just get this amazing picture in my imagination.
Yeah. And because they pull up and she basically, I think she gives Mr. Wolf a little bit of a warning, like saying like, yeah, we're going to do it my way this time. And he agrees, like, okay, whatever you want.
Can you just see his face though when she says it? It's like this resigned look in my head. I can see him just like, yeah, well, no point objecting because this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like, of course, Aunt Pol, whatever you say.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the line is, of course, Pol, Wolf said mildly, whatever you say.
Mm-hmm. So then she pulls up to the gate and they at there, what's your business in Kamar? And she's like, I'm the Duchess of
Erat.
Okay. That's how I said it in my head, but I'm like,
yeah.
So I'm the Duchess of Erat, and these are my retainers, and the business is my own affair.
I know, don't you love it? Like, get out of my way. What I'm doing here is none of your fucking business.
Yeah, and then the guards just kind of go with it. They immediately accept that as truth.
Yes, so her presence must be like...
Yeah, she's really believable in that. They call her Your Grace. Forgive me, Your Grace.
Well, I imagine that she is believable from what we know of her so far. But the way that she just does it so seamlessly it's like, it's like, she's not pretending. This is like somewhere in her, this persona.
Yeah, it's clear that this has been part of her life before. Like, she knows the role very well.
Yeah.
And so they're directing her to the Lion, which is the nicest inn in Kamar.
And I love how the others in the group just kind of pick up on her lead so beautifully. Yeah,
I think that obviously Wolf, he's pretty natural, and Silk are pretty natural with all of that, to just put on whatever face they need to.
Well, they're the only ones who really hear from, but yeah.
Right. And I think, though, I would imagine like Garion, for example, in that situation, he's probably just keeping his mouth shut and trying to look as natural as possible.
Or work out what the hell's going on.
I don't know what my role is in this, so let me just like try to hide now.
Yeah.
That's how I'd imagine him to be if we could actually see what he was.
Yeah.
Doing in that moment.
So I think he and Dernick. So we hear from Wolf and Silk. They sort of pick up on this new way of being. We don't hear from Barak which I think is perfectly normal. If he's sort of hulking along, looking very dangerous, he doesn't need to do anything except exist. It's doing the whole thing. And Dernick and Garion, like, of course, I can imagine they're sitting on their horses with their eyes bugging out of their heads going, how the hell do I do now?
Yeah, exactly. And Silk is really natural with the role, because when they arrive, it says at Custom Square, he approaches somebody and he's basically like, my mistress requires direction to an inn called the Lion. Be so good as to provide them. Yeah.
And he's really haughty and insulting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he gets into the role really, really good.
Yeah. So they get to the inn and so, Uphol's really getting into this. She doesn't just get a room, she gets an entire apartment. So it really is like we step into this feeling of royalty, as you said.
Yeah. And even like the innkeeper, when they get there, he comments that she has a commanding presence.
Yeah, everyone's kind of in awe of her. And so they go up to their room and the innkeeper sends his daughter up to be a maid for Aunt Pol, and Aunt Pol's like said, and our bags are way behind. What did she say? Our baggage horses are behind us, so I will need a dressmaker and a maid to wait on me.
Yeah, that's it. And this is where she's talking, because they get up to the room. Is it? Are they already in there?
Yeah, so they all troop up to the room, and Garion's, it sort of describes how Garion's a bit kind of glamoured by the whole thing because it's such a rich place. And, one of the comments is that there's real wax candles rather than smoky tallow. So that kind of gives you this, and tapestries on the walls. So
yeah. And then this is the moment when they get up there and Dernick finally speaks up, and he's kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do? And she's like, well, it's really quite simple.
Yeah, but she doesn't drop the act. Like, she stays in the Duchess of Erat kind of mind the whole time now.
Yeah, and so she directs him of who he is, what he's going to do. And she said, how would you like to be the chief groom of the Duchess of Erat and master of her stables?
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of like, that's a noble title for me, but sure, I'll give it a try.
Work I've done all my life, but yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all assigned their positions in her, what do you call it? Not retinue, entourage.
Yeah.
And then Garion's like, well, what am I? And she's, well, you're my page. You can be my page. And I love this part. Can you guess which part I love the most? A little bit.
I don't know, because she's like, you're gonna fetch me things, and he's basically like, well, that's what I always do anyways.
And she's like, don't be impertinent. You also answer the door, announce the visitors, and you may, if I'm melancholy, you may sing to me. And I love what he said.
Yeah, I forgot about that part.
You won't be very gracious if I have to sing for you.
Yeah, that line made me curse. I'm like, if only this book could be like their voices, so that he could give a sample of his singing for us.
Yes, so,
that would be perfect.
So that's my favorite line.
Yeah, that is really.
I've been trying to work out how to make it into a hashtag. You won't be very gracious. There we go.
That's good. Yeah, you won't be very gracious.
There we go.
And then the maid that she sent for arrives.
Yeah, this is a nice little thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Her name is Donia.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce it?
Yep.
Yeah, so she kind of addresses her briefly. But later, I think it's a little bit later on when Garion notices they're kind of hanging out.
Yeah, because they're like the same age, and I guess it's been a while since Garion's been around anyone his own age, and she's a pretty thing, and he feels comfortable with her. So that's like a nice little soft connection that he has. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's a good little moment. And I think that comes a little bit later though, as I'm looking through here, because first Mr. Wolf comes in and is like basically doing his little whispers about who they're following, what they're looking for again.
Well, yeah, so he comes in and talks about it, and so they're going out again. So each place that they've stopped, he and Silk have gone out to look for the trail in inverted commas, you know. However, it is that he tracks this trail or picks it up. And
yeah, so they leave to go do that again.
Yeah. Yep.
And then Barrack and Garion are kind of left alone in the apartment, right?
Yeah, so this
because
is
Aunt Pole went to go have her bath.
Well, yeah, so she's gone off with Donia, and Garion's there with Barrack. So what do you I'll let you go with this scene.
Yeah, I like this scene because we don't see too much from Barrack usually. We don't really say that much. And so to have a whole conversation with him was kind of nice. And he seems actually very knowledgeable about the people of Sendaria or the world that they're in, and like the backgrounds of stuff. And he knows the story. Talks about Garion's like asking him a lot of questions, and he seems, when Garion starts to get into a point where it seems too far, Barrack kind of pulls back, and he's just basically like, I can't tell you that because if Aunt Pole found out, I wouldn't want to be that man on the other end of Aunt Pole's scolding, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and in the conversation that he has with Garion, it talks about different parts of the world and, you know, where the tapestries come from, and they talk a little bit. So I think this is the first time we hear about Arans, who are the people depicted in the tapestries, and they're obviously, you know, they're dressed in lots of armor, and they talk about Barrack sort of tells him a little bit about that. And then during the conversation, they get into a little bit of a lesson about the Angarax.
Yeah.
And I know that you've asked about the Angarax before, and it is a little bit confusing. So these are the people that belong to Torak, the one-eyed god. So it's really nice and simply explained here by Barrack to Garion. You know, there are 5 tribes. And so there's the Murgos and the Thols, who Garion has already met. But then there's the Nadrax and the Malarians and the Grollems. And he talks about how, you know, where they live and how the Grollems don't live in any special place, but they're the priests of Torak. What did you think about the description of the priests' duties and their religious observances?
Oh, I don't remember that part. Where is it here? Or you can just tell me.
So the priests of Torak, basically one of the main the central part of their religious practice is human sacrifice. And it says that the Grollum knives have spilled more Angarac blood than a dozen Vomimbers. So Vomimbre was that war that Garion pretended to be fighting in when he was playing with his friend, you know, way back when. That's right. Like the big battle. And so it says, you know, Grollems obviously do the sacrificing of the people to the god, and it's all very horrible.
Yeah. Well, as soon as I didn't remember the description, but as soon as he says the Grollems are priests, the priests of Torak, I immediately went to, again, like when you get deeper into the Lord of the Rings story and you learn about the priests that are work for like the Dark Lord and that series too, my mind just kind of visualized that same scenario of just these.
Which priests in the Lord of the Rings? I'm trying to place the story.
I think it's more in, if you go back and read the Silmarillion. Have you read that?
I've never read that.
It's basically like the history book of the Lord of the Rings world, and I think they're in there a bit in it, but they're really powerful. And so I visualized, but reading this, the Grollems to me didn't seem up until now all that powerful. Right.
So we're starting to build the picture like that. Yeah, they've been kind of harmless. They've been an annoyance, and they've been like people that they've wanted to avoid, but they haven't been dangerous.
Yeah, and so this gives you a whole new angle on them of like, oh, so priest to me, when it's used in the terms of darkness like that, means that they have some type of this dark magic within them that was given to them by something that they did that wasn't very good. And so and the fact that they make these sacrifices.
Yeah, it's horrible. And next, dun dun dun, magical moment. I'll leave it up to you.
Well, which one are you talking about? Because I'm looking at I'm looking at when they start talking about the orb of Aldor. Is that what you mean?
Ding 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 ding.
Yeah, because it's the first time we've heard of it again since way back in the beginning, right?
In the prologue.
So Beric knows a lot of this story. He's telling him about Garion about the orb. We learn a little bit more about it. And
so what have you learned about the orb, just in this little part, so that I can get it from your point of view? So the orb of Aldor is obviously like the big thing of this story that everybody wants, because it holds a lot of, whoever has it seems to hold all the power in some way. So at least that's how Torak sees it. Says he wants it because he was able to use it to, crack the world, as Beric says, is told in the story. And then the orb repays him by burning out his eye and consuming his hand. And so Garion seems confused by that. Like, how can the world be cracked? I don't understand that part of the story. So Beric basically says that's how powerful it is.
Yeah. When Torak raised it, the earth was split apart by its power, and the seas came in to drown the land. The story's very old, but I think that's probably true, is what Beric says. Yeah,
I love how it's just so kind of, like, yep, probably true.
Yeah. I can, like, if I was saying that, I could just see, like, shrugging my shoulders, like, yeah, it's probably true.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and then Garion asks the key question.
Where is it now? And this is when Beric starts to kind of shut off. He's like, I'm not answering you anymore. So Garion's like, you know what I think? I think that the orb is what's been stolen. And that's what we're trying to find. That's what Mr. Wolf is hunting.
And Beric's like, yeah, well, I think I'm just going to shut up now.
Yeah, he's like, and I think it'd be better if you didn't think so much about such things.
Yeah, so that's like it's basically the same conversation that Garion had with Silk in one of the earlier chapters, where Garion's being very intuitive and insightful and hitting the nail on the head in a lot of different ways. And Silk's like, yeah, well, I'm not going to answer these questions because, that's going to get me into trouble. And Beric's kind of saying the same thing, and Garion's like, you're not afraid of Aunt Pol, are you? And Beric's like, you're not?
Yeah. He's like, any man with a good sense is afraid of her. And Garion's kind of like, what? Aunt Pol? He doesn't see it. Like, he doesn't understand how people could be afraid of her. And so Beric's like, Garion says no. And then he's like, well, I'm not really afraid.
And Beric's like, yeah, like that. Exactly.
Can't find the word. You can't find the word. And Beric's like, exactly. You really are afraid.
I'm not any more stupid than you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really
go back and forth. Yeah. It's like, he won't tell him stuff. He keeps trying to ask, and he's asking.
Oh, and then this is like almost it's a pretty good repeat of that conversation he has with Silk, actually, because they get to the who am I questions as well. In the end, Silk says that I'm not a sender, and I don't think my parents were senders. Their names don't sound like it anyway. And then Beric's like... Yeah.
He tells him that he looks like a Revan?
A Revan. And so is this the first time we've heard of Revans in the story?
Yeah.
So I think the only other mention of them is when Silk talks about being not forgiving the snake people, the Neosons, for murdering the Riven King. So there's something important about the Riven King so the Rivens don't have a king anymore, but they're part of this same group of peoples that the Chereks and the Drasnians and the Sendars are part of. So there's the Drasnians, who Silk is one of, the Chereks, who Barak is one of, the Sendars, and that's Dernek, and now the Rivens, who apparently Garion looks a lot like, who don't have a king.
And he asks too, is Aunt Pole a Reven? And then again, Barak doesn't want to answer that.
So and it's like the sense I get from Garion at the end of this conversation is he's like, oh yeah, I know. You're not telling me, but I know.
Yeah. Like, I'll find out someday, at least.
Yeah. So, and then Barak distracts Garion. Like any teenage boy would be totally distracted by.
Oh, yeah, to teach him how to use a sword.
Which he's totally
about that.
So he totally forgets all about the questions that he had at the prospect of holding a sword and learning how to use it.
Well, doesn't it later say that he kind of quickly got bored with it once he realized
how heavy the bloody thing was?
Once he got out there, he got over it pretty fast.
That's cool. And then Silk and Mr. Wolf get back from their exploration, and they're all wet from the snow, but they look pretty happy with themselves, and so they all get together.
And Aunt Pole comes back because she's all done up now.
Oh, yes, this is her re-entry after being with the dressmaker.
And Garion definitely notices a huge difference, even though he's been with her his whole life.
Yeah, so
it's like the first time he's realizing how beautiful she is. Yeah,
he's like stunned. His voice is just taken away. He's standing there like a fish with his mouth open. And this is so beautiful, this line. Paul says, "Don't stand and gape, Garion. It's not polite." And he says, "You're beautiful, Aunt Pole." "Yes, dear," she said, patting his cheek. "I know. Now, where is the old wolf?"
Not even a thank you. She just says, "I know."
Yeah.
I know.
So,
of course I am.
And then she goes in and everyone, so, it's very girl. It's very like, not Aunt Pole. This little bit is like a whole other little dimension to Aunt Pole, dressed in her finery when she enters the room with all the other people in it.
Yep. It's a whole other side to her.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, do you like it?"
Yeah. Mr. Wolf kind of just is like, "Oh yeah, of course, blue has always been your color," and he gets right into business of like, it, I know it's been here, whatever it is. And did it come by sea? Aunt Pole asks. No, he says. He probably came ashore with it in some secluded cove up the coast and then traveled here by land. Yeah, so they've finally picked up the trail of this, whatever it is that they're following. And then they start talking about where they'll go next. And they touch on a couple of God things. But before we hit that, I just want to go back just a little bit and talk about Dernek's reaction to Aunt Pole, because this is kind of important. When she comes out and she's completely gorgeous, Dernek's like just about poleaxed, the poor man. He's so his adoration is just plain on his face, and he just Garion completely observes it, and even feels sorry for him a bit, I think.
Yeah, so I don't know that he's sorry, but he's like.
Well, I think he picked up on Dernek's. Yeah, he picked up on Dernek's, I think. The way they describe his face turned very pale and then very red and finally settled into an expression of such hopelessness.
And I think Garion's been watching him since he was a little boy and how much he loves Aunt Pol, you know.
Yeah, and so I think that in a sense he felt sorry for him in that way, just because I think he realized that Dernick felt like, I'll never get her.
Yeah.
I'll never get her.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
It's like he felt his pain in that moment.
Yeah. And so they touch on a couple of gods here. Do you remember?
No, I see the paragraph that I think of that.
Yeah, so we won't read any more text in case we get done for copyright, but
yeah. I don't know if we've done enough of that, but we'll stay away.
Okay, I'm just, oh my God, I don't want to get in trouble. So they talk about Belar, and who is the bear god of the Alorns. And the Alorns are the Sendarians and the Drasnians and the Chereks and the Revens, I think. And so Belar, the bear god, and then they talk about the Ulgos and the wrath of Ul. So there's the Belar and Ul, who is apparently even more fearsome than Belar. So there's a couple of gods who get touched on. It's just in normal conversation, like.
Yeah, all that was a little bit over my head, is not knowing, too much about the rest of the story yet.
So what's your reaction to it, knowing that they're talking about gods here in the context of just like planning where they're going next?
I think that it proves Garion's really on the right track about his hunches of what they're after, and because it's all tied back to Kaltorak as well, as he was a god, and the orb was tied to him, and then these gods are all tied together, and so I think that's all I could get out of it, basically.
Okay, cool. So yeah, and then Dernick sort of says he doesn't understand, and Wolf goes over the fact that it's best not to say the name of the person who's stolen the thing, or even the name of the thing, because he can pick it up, and then so they touch on this, and Dernick's like, is he a sorcerer or something? And Wolf sort of deflects that, saying, well, that's not what I would call him, but. So that's out there now. There's the sorcerer word up there.
Right. Yeah, a lot like he who must not be named. Do not speak it, because it'll make him stronger.
And so let's call him Thief instead. And so they're trying to work out where he's going, and they don't know whether. So he seems to be. He's definitely connected to Torak. Because Wolf's like, well, he's always wanted the thing for himself, so we don't know for sure if he'll take it to Torak, which must be what he should do. This thief should be taking whatever it is to Torak, but he might want to keep it for himself. Then they talk a little bit about Selmistra, who is the queen of the serpent people, who are the Nersins. And it's interesting, did you catch the thing that Aunt Pol says about the Nersin queen?
No, I didn't.
So she's like, if it turns out, if Selmistra's been messing in this, I'm going to sort her out once and for all. And so if Aunt Pol is the kind of person who sorts out queens just because they've pissed her off, that's kind of awesome.
Yeah. Shows how powerful she is to go up against the queen of the serpent people. To me, it's like queen of the serpent people. I'm really interested I would like to see her. If this was a movie, that would be the part I'd be waiting for.
Oh, we haven't even talked about how we would cast the characters who our favorite. Don't worry, people, darling people, that's going to happen one of these episodes. We might even make it a bonus episode where we cast the book, maybe at the end of we'll wait till we get all the characters and we've got a good idea of what they're all like. We might make that a bonus episode.
Yeah, it has to be an episode all on its own, because that would be a lot.
So, there's so much in this. There's so much in this episode, but we're
Chapter.
nearly at the end. So they leave it. They say, "Oh, we'll talk about where we're actually going to go, how we're actually going to proceed tomorrow." You know, it's a bit early, and then the soldiers turn up,
Right.
and come looking for Mr. Wolf and tell them that they're going to take them to see King Fulrak. And the way that Mr. Wolf kind of reacts to that news is interesting, I think. Did you find it so?
I didn't pick up on it.
Well, he's just so bloody relaxed about the whole thing. He's like, let's just get this over with. If Fulrak, like, refers to the king by his first name. If Fulrak wants to see me, let's just get this over with as quickly as possible.
Yeah, when he shows himself, like, because at first Aunt Paul's trying to like cover for him, and then he just kind of strolls out. He's like, all right, I'm here.
Like, whatever. This is just let's just get this over with. So Aunt Paul's like doing the do with the Queen when she gets pissed off with her, and Mr. Wolf's like, yeah, well, whatever, what the bloody hell does Fulrak want? Like he's the next door neighbour or something.
Like he's just bothered. Like,
let's just get this over and done with. And so whilst the soldiers treat them very graciously, it's they're left by with no misunderstanding that they aren't allowed to leave. They are virtually being kept prisoners. And then like the last I think that's right. And the other thing that is good here is that the captain of the soldiers calls Aunt Paul out on being the Duchess of Erat because his great uncle is the Duke of Erat, and he's like, so I don't want to contradict you, but I know this dude, and you ain't that dude. But Aunt Paul like doesn't drop any of it for a second. She keeps going. And
she was really good with like keeping her cool on that.
Yeah, and she just looks like, if anything, she like holds it even more firmly and just gets like more haughty. In my head, that's what happens anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been that cool about it. I would have started stuttering and like looking for, okay, he caught me. What am I going to do?
Can you even imagine Aunt Paul stuttering for a moment?
No, not at all.
So we've discovered that Aunt Paul is incredibly beautiful, very, very good at being haughty, and is now a prisoner of Colonel Brendig, who is going to take them all to see King Fulrak, and that's where the chapter ends.
Yeah, that should be an interesting string of events coming up.
Yeah, and so right at the end, Garion's like obviously overawed with all of the stuff, and he imagines the door closing when Colonel Brendig leaves has like not the sound of a wooden door, but the clang of a dungeon door.
Mm-hmm. That's Garion's perception. Like, oh crap, we're in for it now.
And that is the whole chapter, and my throat's really dry now.
I know, that was long. It's a long chapter.
Bloody hell. Take a breath.
So to get into like the magic of this chapter, what stood out for me, and I didn't want to speak too much on it, just like you didn't want to speak too much on your moment, but was the part with we learn more about Torak with the orb of Aldor, and how Torak used that to crack the world.
That's big magic. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, and then the orb almost retaliates against him for doing that by burning his eye out. And that just fascinated me, because to have this thing that can do such destruction in the wrong hands, to literally crack the world in half, I mean, that's some big magic that it's like, wow. You imagine if something like that actually existed, like what trouble we'd be in if someone got their hands on it.
How do you see like that magic working? So what are the rules that are being created in your head? So he cracked the world and then it retaliated. So what's the do you have any rules being, you know what I mean? Do you know how when you learn about magic in a world, there's sort of a consequence, or, you know, you have to give up something to get the magic, or is there anything like that being built in your imagination as you picture the story?
I've never been that good at picking up rules of magic in the worlds that I read. Honestly, I'm not the person that can pick that stuff up very easily. I didn't really pick much up with this either, other than the orb obviously has some kind of a mind of its own.
Oh, I like that. I like that, right?
That's what I really got out of it, to know that it can retaliate against you.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So my bit of magic was just a sweet, you know, the way Aunt Pol and Garion were together, and he put his hand out, and we haven't heard about that mark on his palm again yet, but that's like the key. You know, reaches his hand out, touches the white lock of hair, and opens this window in his mind where he sees this stuff. And then when Aunt Pol's like had enough and doesn't want any more questions, we know that he's already tired, but the way it's written, you know, she says, and go to sleep now, and he's like out like a light. And there just seems to be this really quiet, deep kind of magical substance in the way that she just puts him to sleep so gently, so beautifully, just like blinking. And I love that. So that's my magical thing.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So relating it to real life, for this chapter, I related to the part when Garion and Barrack were talking, and then Garion starts going a little bit too far, and Barrack starts to get nervous and doesn't want to answer anymore. I mean, Aunt Pol she really reminds me of one of my own aunts. I literally have an aunt who's just like her, so stern. As a child, you're like terrified of her in a way, but she was never like mean, like not mean. She was just really stern. And so growing up, I didn't live in the same city, so when I would go visit, the cousins that lived near her that I had knew much better of like what you can and cannot say around her. So they were very sure if she was close, they would not say anything wrong because they did not want the scolding. So that's what Barrack's reactions just reminded me of that moment.
Okay. Okay. Well, my bit of personal real life relating is when they get to the inn, the Lion in Kamar, the beautiful, you know, upmarket inn, the best inn in the city, and Garion's all a bit like glamoured by how everything is, you know, it's all very beautiful and rich. And I can remember when I was a very little girl being taken on an overnight sleeper train from Charleville, where we lived in the middle of Queensland, a little country town, with my mum to Brisbane, which was the closest big city to. I think I had to have something done with my ear, like see a specialist. But so I had this amazing train journey. Got to sleep overnight in this really beautiful like train carriage. We had our private carriage, and then we got to this city hotel, and I've never seen a city in my life, so I'm like, you know, everything's glittery and like, wow, it's all amazing. And we got to the hotel, and I remember just being completely awed. So I just went back into this memory of myself as a little girl walking into this place. And yeah, so that's what I'm relating that to this week.
Yeah, that's awesome though, to have that like that childlike wonder of
exactly. Oh, and that's such a happy memory. Like my cheeks are aching. I'm smiling so big.
Oh, that's good. I brought that back for you.
Okay. Oh, you know what time it's for now? Did I even say a proper sentence just then?
I think our brains are fried after that chapter. But yeah, it's time for prophecy speaks.
Prophecy speaks. And I finally have a different book.
Ooh, I saw that. I smell every time I grab a book, I like to smell it to see. Some of them have that really, really good book smell, and others just don't have a smell.
I like the secondhand book smell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like the more they're used, the more they have, the paper smells stronger.
It's like that, I don't know. They pick up more magic with the more hands that touch them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so which book are you using today?
So I am using a book called Spitting Out the Bones, a Zen Master's 45-Year Journey by D. Genpo Merzel. Wow. And I actually read it all a while ago, and it was very, very interesting. So this is the one that I'm looking at today, and I don't really have a specific oh yes I do so so I've been contacted by someone that I don't know really at all, and I'm not quite sure what they want, but there's some kind of like, let's get together, and because your business, my business, but I'm just not quite sure what it's all about, and it's all a bit so maybe a little bit of insight into what the hell I should do about that. That would be good.
Yeah, that face was classic.
Only people could see it. I do have video of this, and one day you might actually get to see that face, so you never know. You're lucky in the big city. So
yeah, that's a good one. It is hard when you get that kind of approach.
Yes, so I'm just so yeah, a little bit of direction to do with that would be great. However, it is the teacher's job and responsibility to break this kind of illusion. At some point, when the student is advanced, he or she has to be disillusioned by the teacher. Okay, so it's my job to disappoint this person.
That was very direct.
It was. No nonsense this week.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so the book I'm doing today is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
I've wanted to read this for ages.
Oh, you haven't read this yet? Oh,
no,
man.
I haven't got the book in my library yet.
You need to do, because it's a really awesome book. I forget The War of Art. This book came to mind to send to my client who I just started working with, because I'm helping her write her book, and I think this book is perfect for people who are in the arts trying to create, because he's so right on with so much of this stuff. And like when you have that resistance come up, and you don't want to just do it, like write the damn book, then pull this book out. So I was going to send it to her, so it was on top of my mind, so I pulled it out. But for me, I guess I pulled it out for myself too, because I, as well, with the break and all of that, I've not been writing as much as I'd like, and excuses of like, well, I got the business stuff to do, so that's more important, in quotations, which isn't true.
Oh yes, the many and varied excuses we can come up with for not putting our bum in the seat and writing the words.
Yeah. So I think it's just maybe some direction from my own writing journey. Let's see. Okay. When I lived in the back of my Chevy van, I had to dig my typewriter out from beneath layers of tire tools, dirty laundry, and moldering paperbacks. My truck was a nest, a hive, a hellhole on wheels, whose sleeping surface I had to clear each night just to carve out a foxhole to snooze in. The professional cannot live like that. He is on a mission. He will not tolerate disorder. He eliminates chaos from his world in order to banish it from his mind. He wants the carpet vacuumed and the threshold swept, so the muse may enter and not soil her gown. Okay,
so what does that say to you, apart from the fact that it just says everything to you right then on the paper?
Um, this one, I don't know. It's a hard one for me because
Really?
yeah, because he's talking about, you have, well, I mean, if I think more in metaphorical terms, not literally like clearing and cleaning your house, because to me, I don't know, I feel like that gets in the way because then I'm using that as a distraction in itself to like not sit down and write because I'm like, oh, I gotta clean up this mess, and like, oh, let me clean my desk or reorganize it instead of just writing. Um, but in like a more of a metaphorical sense, and like he says, um, he will not tolerate disorder. He eliminates chaos from his world in order to banish it from his mind. I think that specifically is the phrase there for me, is that, I need to still work a little bit better on keeping everybody else's chaos out of my world. And that includes like my business stuff, like figuring out a way to keep that ordered and organized so that I'm not feeling so scattered by it. Because I feel like so scattered by it sometimes to the point of I can't like rest until it's organized, and I just need to get more organized with it.
Okay.
Then, yeah.
So you got your answer.
Yep. That's it. All right, so let's see. I didn't actually write out a prediction for the next chapter.
Give us one by the city of
But I think that you're reading back to the chapter now. I'm in the War of Art here.
So we finished with the door closing, and there's a dungeon in Garion.
Yeah.
Imagination.
I think that Mr. Wolf seems so calm and collected about all of this. He knows a lot more than what Garion does, and I don't think they're in as much trouble. I think that Wolf's going to easily kind of talk them out of this situation to where Garion's going to be like, oh, that was easy. And then they'll be on their way again. And like what Mr. Wolf will do, I don't know, but I think he's going to pull something out of his sleeve.
Cool. Let's just check the prediction you had for last week. So last week you said they'll finally catch up to who and what they're following, and Garion will begin to understand the depth of his journey. So part of that's right. I think Garion's starting to, understand more of what they're doing, but they're definitely, well, no, I guess they have caught up. Like they've got the trail. So, pretty good doing. Well done.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Garion does call it out to say, I think we're actually after the orc.
Okay, I'll pay that. I'll pay that.
Yes, I'm on a roll now.
Okay, darling listeners, if you're all the way at the end of this episode, you can catch us on our social media platforms. I'll put all the links in the show notes. You can get us on Facebook and Instagram are our main places. And you can find out all of the general information and episodes and what have you on our website, Belgariad and Beyond. .goddesskindled.com, but I'll put again all the links in the show notes, so just go there and click on the clicky things. And if you'd like to talk to us about this episode in particular, you can use the hashtag Duchess of Erat, because that's like, I think, the main one for the chapter. And hopefully you will take a chance and have a go at the Prophecy Speaks for yourself. Like, if you've been a listener since episode 1 and you haven't done it yet, what's going on and why haven't you told us about it? And if you're having a problem, ask some questions and we will help you out.
Yeah, that's what this is for too. It's a community. We can all connect with each other. And the Prophecy Speaks, I think, is an opportunity to really open up more doors to like say, hey, this is me and this is where I'm coming from. And we
would so love to hear from you. And I don't know if we're at the 100 Facebook followers yet, but we may already have a private Facebook group, because if we've reached 100 followers, my deal is once we get there, private group time, and you will be invited in and we can have all kinds of geeky conversations and magic, and it will be amazing. So check it out. Maybe it's already there. Time travel.
I'm going to say, yeah, it's there because we already have 85 people now. I would hope by March we're going to have 15 more people.
So let's see how we're going. Maybe I'm already in the group chatting with you, and this is like totally meta.
I know this time travel thing is great. With the
I know, I love it. Okay. Oh, is it us? Guys. I'm so tired.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry for lunch and thirsty. I gotta go pee.
Your lunchtime is my really late dinner time. It's like 8:30, and I want food.
Yeah, me too. So we will say goodbye to you guys and go eat our food.
See you next week, my love.
Sounds good.
Oh, that was a good one. Wow, that was like my brain's aching.
I know, it was a lot, and it kept stumping me too. This chapter was stumping me a lot.